Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, and welcome to this press conference with Dr. Ngozi Okonjo Iwoala of Nigeria. Before I give Dr. Ngozi the floor, a few housekeeping points. This press conference involves journalists who are participating here in person and also via WebEx. If you are participating via WebEx and would like to ask a question, please raise your hand by pressing the icon at the bottom of the screen. I would also be grateful if all journalists would please identify themselves and their news organizations before taking the floor. Interpretation in the room will be provided in English, French, and Spanish. The complete bio for Dr. Ngozi is available now on the WTO website, and the statement she has just delivered to the General Counsel will be on the site very soon. Dr. Ngozi will give a very brief opening statement, and then we will take your questions. We will have precisely 30 minutes. Dr. Ngozi, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Keith. Okay, let me start again. Good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor and privilege to be here to share the views of my candidacy with the WTO members. All I want to say is that trade is important for the 21st century, is important for prosperity, and is important for resilience, is important for sustainable growth. And the WTO is right at the heart of this. Therefore, we want to rejuvenate and reform the WTO to be the organization that it needs to be for the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions, please. The first question is for Laurent. Laurent, vous avez la parole.
Laurent Siro, Swiss News Agency. Dr. Ngozi, good to see you again.
Thank you.
We raised already the question about the fact that there were 3 candidates for Africa. Was there any question from member states during that session, and could you feel any sense of concern regarding that divide?
Thank you very much for that. I didn't get any questions about this, and I would not say there's a sense of divide. I would say that I'm proud of my continent for producing 3 good candidates, and that it's up to the members to choose on merit from all the candidates. So I don't think it's a divide. And of course, I hope I'm the candidate that is chosen and is backed, because I think I have the qualifications and the leadership characteristics to do the job. I'm sure Africa will come behind my candidacy.
Thank you very much. The next question for Bryce, please.
Hello, Bryce Bashik with Bloomberg News. Thank you. Wanted to ask you, in your view, how would you describe the role of the WTO Director General?
Thank you, Bryce. The WTO Director General has no direct decision-making authority, but the WTO Director General can work to make things move along through influence. And that influence can be proactive. And that's the kind of DG, if I'm selected, that I intend to be, to use that proactively to work with members, to deliver outcomes, starting with the next ministerial, that would show that the WTO is back and the WTO is rejuvenated. So a proactively supportive Director General.
Thank you very much. Dr. Ngozi, we have a question from WhatsApp from Mayowa Tijani from the Cable in Nigeria. The question is, what is your position on fair trade, especially as it concerns the global North and South?
Thank you very much. That's a good question. The multilateral trading system and the WTO are in place to serve all members. And the hallmark of of the WTO is fair, open, transparent, predictable, and stable trade. So the expectation is that trade should benefit all members. And where it does not, and where the South has been left behind, we should deploy the instruments that are available to make sure we enable countries in the South and members in the South to trade more, to derive more benefits from the multilateral trading system than they have. And were I to be selected as DG, I would be very keen to make sure that instruments like Aid for Trade, which involves technical assistance, capacity building, and working with other organizations, such as the World Bank, the regional development banks, to be able to deliver to countries what they need to improve investments within their borders so that they can process their goods more, create more jobs, and have more to trade. That's what I would be doing to make sure the South improves its position and benefits from the multilateral trading system.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to remind our journalists that are participating via WebEx that you should please raise your hand by touching the hand icon so we can call on you. And it appears Doug Palmer of Politico in Washington has raised his hand. Doug, I give the floor to you, please.
Hi, this is Doug. Can you all hear me okay? No. Okay.
Just a second, Doug. Dr. Ngozi. Okay, can you hear? Go ahead, Doug.
All right, can you hear me? All right. Great. Thanks. That's great. You talked about wanting to achieve results by the next ministerial, and given that the selection process could continue into early November, what do you think is achievable by the ministerial, which I believe will be held in the middle of next year? And there's a number of problems afflicting the WTO. Do you think it's best to go at them one at a time, or is it time for like a big round of negotiations to try to tackle all of these issues at once? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that question. Achieving results by the next ministerial, well, I would hope to encourage the membership to come to a quicker decision so that we'll have, whoever becomes DG will have more time to work towards the next ministerial. But even if it's by November, I do believe that some of the deliverables that one could have at the next ministerial are on their way. And I'm talking about the fisheries negotiations, where there are some outstanding issues. A lot has been done. A couple of outstanding issues to do with quote-unquote bad subsidies that encourage overfishing and overcapacity. That these could be, there could be consensus arrived at as to how to deal with these subsidies. And I think it's achievable within the time of the ministerial. I also think support to small-scale fisheries could be achievable. Where there is political will, I think this is doable. With respect to all the problems, there was a lot of discussion of trust and building trust in order to move negotiations along. So it could be that one way to do that is to sequence reforms and have some succeed, some wins. And once we have a win or two, then we can proceed with things in parallel. So I believe that there is need for some sequencing in the beginning, and then could be followed by more reforms coming through.
I give the floor now to Christian Ulrich from DPA. Christian, you have the floor, please.
Thank you. I'm here. Nice to see you here. My question is, if you are the successful candidate and you are elected, when you speak to the American president or president-elect, whatever the timing is, what would you say to him? Why does the world need the WTO, and why is it a bad idea for the US to leave the organization? Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very important question. I would say to the president that the WTO delivered for all countries, including the United States in the past. It is because of the multilateral rules-based trading system that we have had prosperity and the lifting of millions out of poverty. And it's been shared prosperity. And we could do it again. Where the trading system, I would say to him or him, where the trading system has failed, we need to fix it so that it can be more inclusive, it can benefit more people, that surely it's not the time now to leave a WTO that matters. We need an institution that can promote a rules-based system. Remember the trade wars, I would say to him, of the past? We don't want that. We want peace and security and stability. That is why the WTO is needed, with its ability to arbitrate disputes within members. So don't leave now. Let's try to fix what needs fixing. And if we didn't have the WTO, we would have to invent it. That's what I'd say to him.
All right, the next question is for Habiba Broger, please. And after Habiba, we'll go over to Emma from Reuters. Habiba, you have the floor, please.
Yeah. I'm Habiba Broger from the News Agency of Nigeria. Nice to see you, Dr. Iwoala. Yeah. Micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises account for an integral part of global economy. And I would say about 95% of companies worldwide and over 60% of the sector accounts for employment of people from this sector. Now with COVID-19, there's no doubt that this sector has suffered a lot. Even bigger companies are still suffering from the shock of this pandemic. Should you become the DG of the WTO, how would you ensure that this sector regains from its economic, has some kind of economic recovery? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Habiba. I also said during my presentation that micro, medium, and small enterprises are very important, and the fact that there are discussions ongoing about how to better integrate them into the multilateral trading system is very exciting and very important. One crucial thing arising from COVID-19 and the impact it's had on economic growth and the shrinking, the predicted contraction of the world economy and economies all around the world is that these medium, small, and micro enterprises have been very badly affected. So they need liquidity. And we need to make sure that for them to survive, they should have adequate liquidity to keep their businesses going. My worry is that there have been countries globally who have been able to make this liquidity available to their own medium, small, and micro enterprises, and others, like many developing countries, including least developed countries, who have not. And one of my roles as a AU envoy has been with my other 5 colleagues, we are 6, to see how we can also facilitate and encourage additional resources from outside and inside to these medium, small, and micro enterprises, so that they can regain their position, they can stand, and they can not only keep jobs, but thrive in the future to create more, because like you said, they create the most jobs worldwide. So I'm very keen. I think it's a very important sector, and the WTO should work hard to make sure that these types of enterprises are supported.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question is for Emma Farsh from Reuters. Emma, you have the floor, please.
Good afternoon, Dr. Ngozi. Good to see you. I was hoping to draw you on something that was mentioned by the Mexican candidate earlier. He alluded to the fact that there were discussions about potentially waiting until after the next election to make a final decision on the leader of the WTO. Have you had those sorts of discussions, and do you think it's a good idea? And any comment generally on the importance of the timing of a decision on the next leader? Thank you.
Well, thank you. Let me start by saying that it's up to the members to make a decision on when they want the next WTO DG. But I would hope that it would be a rapid decision. Why? not from personal reasons, but from the fact that the world is at a very uncertain juncture. And we don't know the trajectory of this pandemic. We don't know what is going to happen. And therefore, an institution as important as the WTO should have leadership as quickly as possible to be able to make sure the WTO contributes what it can to the multilateral trading system, and that in turn contributes to a recovery of the world economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Ngozi, I have a question now from Sharon Atieno from Science Africa in Nairobi. And Sharon's question is, what will the position mean for women in your country if you get chosen as Director General?
Well, thank you very much, Sharon. If I get chosen, I hope it's a sign to not only to women and girls in my country, but to women and girls worldwide that the world is ready and women can do it. The organization has not had a woman or an African as DG, and I think it's been led by men from developed countries for, if I'm correct, for 62 years, and 10 years men from developing countries. So if a woman, but my insistence is that choosing a DG WTO should be on merit. You know, it should be on merit. The best person to lead the institution that is having so many challenges should be chosen. Now, I would say to them, if that person happens to be a woman, great. If she happens to be African, great. But choose who deserves to lead. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question is for Xin Ling from the Xinhua News Agency. You have the floor, please.
Thank you, Keith. Good afternoon. Madam, you are chair of the board of Gavi and special envoy of African Union in the fight against COVID-19. So if elected, what's your plan as Director General to ensure smooth global trade, especially of essential goods such as vaccines, and promote prompt economic recovery in and after the COVID crisis? Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a very important question. I am indeed privileged to be chair of Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, and also to be working as envoy to the Tools Accelerator, where there's an attempt by the international community to ensure that finding the tools for solving COVID-19 are there. And it's international community with WHO, with Gavi, with CEPI, and other organizations that have come together. So part of this Tools Accelerator and the raison d'etre is to ensure that when vaccines do become available, that poorer countries will not be left standing in the queue, but that there will be allocation criteria that will mean that poor countries, rich countries get access to the vaccines at the same time. And if I became WTO DG, I would have a very strong collaboration with the Tools Accelerator, which has the WHO, the CEPI, Gavi, to work towards this, to make sure that there are no barriers, no restrictions on the availability of these vaccines, whilst respecting the intellectual property rights of those who have manufactured the vaccines. The world should be able to come to the point where the mechanisms are put in place to also make those vaccines available. And the world trading system should be a facilitator of that and not an impediment. So that would be, I would combine the role of WTO DG with the experience I've had from Gavi to ensure this, because I think it's critical that everyone have access to life-saving vaccines.
Thank you very much. We're going to do two questions in a row from WebEx. The first question is from Ayana Dreyer of Bordelex. Ayana, you have the floor, please.
Hello, thank you. Do you hear me?
You need the earpiece.
Hello?
Do you hear me? Do you hear me? 1 moment.
Yeah, there you go.
Hello?
Hello, do you hear me?
Yeah, it's now fainter. Can I turn it off?
Yeah.
Okay, Do you hear me? Good. Thank you very much, Madam. I have a question to you. Do you think the consensus rule in the WTO should be loosened or dropped to help it overcome the current gridlock? Because it seems most of the problems stem from deep disagreements among members. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think part of the strength of the WTO is when there are multilateral negotiations that involve all members arriving at agreements by consensus, because then the incentive to implement the agreements is there. So I think the consensus rule, what we need to ask ourselves about it is, how do we make it work better? When there's no consensus, you look behind that, and I think there are issues of trust among members that are leading to these disagreements and these divisions. So as I was answering questions, these questions came up from the members during my interview. And I said we need to rebuild trust. It's even in my vision, a WTO with trust. How do you do that? It's not good enough to just talk about it. You have to have concrete confidence-building actions between members. Find the wins. If I were selected as DG WTO, that's what I would do. What are the wins that bring members together to rebuild that trust so that we can begin to then show that consensus decision-making works, it has worked in the past, it can work again, and then we restore it. Because that's the one that gets all members to do what has been agreed. Thank you.
Thank you. Et aussi de WebEx, la prochaine question est pour Estelle Moisson de Jeune Afrique. Estelle, vous avez la parole.
Parfait, merci. Vous m'entendez? Do you hear me? Yeah, I heard the first answer from Mrs. Okonjo Iwoala. I would like to ask her, why is it so difficult to get only one African continent candidate? Why is it so difficult for the African continent to back only one person? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I think perhaps that question is better answered by the African Union. But let me repeat again that I think it's an honor to have 3 qualified candidates from my continent. And we should not necessarily see it as a bad thing. I have total respect for my competitors from all continents for the job of WTO, and I believe that the WTO members should select on merit. Of course, I would love if that came from Africa, because Africa has never had a turn. I would love if it's a woman, because a woman has not had a turn. And of course, I would love it if it were me, because I think I'm qualified to lead, and I have all the attributes. WTO needs leadership. And it needs someone able to bring a bundle of qualities: political ability, an ability to reach decision makers, international contacts, I have that, managerial capabilities from my long years in a multilateral organization like the World Bank, the ability to forge consensus and to negotiate. A reformer. I have a reputation established as a strong reformer, both at the World Bank and also in my country. I've even written a book about it. So I think I bring together a bundle of qualities: public sector, private sector, because you need to know, how do businesses see the WTO and what needs to be done? What about micro, medium, and small enterprises? Just to find out what it means to be a medium or small enterprise owner. I started one myself in Nigeria to see what are the obstacles in the way that you need to clear out. So I'm a doer. You know, I'm solutions-oriented and pragmatic. So I bring together the bundle of qualities and the leadership acumen that you need to lead this. So I would hope that if selected from the African continent, it should be me.
Thank you very much. We have a question from Nigeria, from Obina Chima from This Day. And the question is, one thing this pandemic has shown is the importance of e-commerce and this is one area WTO members have not reached agreement on. If chosen DG, what will you do to make members agree to negotiate on e-commerce rules?
Thank you. This is one of the areas where members are working under what is called the Joint Statement Initiative or plurilateral negotiations. I happen to believe that e-commerce and the digital economy is tremendous, and the COVID-19 pandemic has shown it. People are now, buying online, trading online, they are going to school online. So this is the wave of the future. But we have to pay attention to something very difficult for countries, from developing countries and least developed countries, and that's the digital divide. They cannot participate unless we find a way to take care of this digital divide. They cannot be left out. Even people in our rural areas should not be left out. So I'm very keen, if I were WTO DG, to see what bundle of resources working with other multilateral institutions could we put together to help countries that are not that don't have this infrastructure to get it, so that we can work with e-commerce. That should advance the negotiations, because if you look at those who are not participating, a lot of them are developing countries because they believe, what is in it for me? I don't even have the infrastructure. Why should I be negotiating on e-commerce? Why should I be agreeing to rules that I'm not equipped or competent to discuss this time? So we must take that, we must bite that bullet and help them to get the infrastructure. And then I think we need to move, give them that assurance, and then move the e-commerce negotiations along where all members can agree on rules, because this is the wave of the 21st century. Thank you.
We have time for one more question. Yes, please.
Madam, I'm Angela. I'm a journalist from ChinaSender.com. I have one question for you. I know you are a financial expert, but you never participate directly in a trade negotiation. Do you think that you will be challenged for not being a proper trade expert in this competition? And what advantages do you think you can bring as a financial expert in this perspective? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that's a totally wrong notion. And you know, I've paid respect to my competitors because that's my nature. I don't criticize other people, I respect them. Competitors who have been saying that she's not a trade expert, they're wrong. I'm a development economist. And you cannot do that without looking at trade. Trade is a central part of development. So I've been doing it my whole career at the World Bank. I was working on trade policy reform in middle and low-income countries at the bank. As finance minister, the customs service in my country reported to me, and that's all about trade facilitation. I helped my country's negotiations with my trade minister on the ECOWAS common external tariffs. I don't know how much more trade you can have than that. So those who say I don't have trade, they're mistaken. I think the qualities I have are even better, because I combine development economics with trade, knowledge, along with finance. And you need those combinations of skills to lead the WTO. So I think I have the skills that are needed. So this is a familiar territory to me, not an alien one. I'm a trade person.
Dr. Ngozi, thank you very much for participating. Thank you to all of you who've been here and to all of you who've joined in via WhatsApp and WebEx. Thank you very much. There'll be another press conference. When is it? Soon, 6:30. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much for your patience. Bye. Thank you, Keith.
That was very well done. Very well.